Christmas. Got to spend some nice time with your families. We have a couple of folks that will be joining late tonight. I think Darren was bringing somebody to the airport, so he'll be joining, and Scott's definitely joining. I was talking to him earlier, and Janet will be joining as well. So I'm going to kick the meeting off now, and we'll expect them to come in as needed. So call the meeting to order. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everyone. I see we have a large number of guests tonight. Welcome to all. First item is to approve the minutes from our last meeting 2 weeks ago. Josh, there is one item that I discovered that needs to be updated on the minutes. I'll mention that to you now. It's actually the last sentence on the first page. It says, Steve Purcell motion to add the chairman compensation language to the town charter. That should be counselor. All right. Anyone else have any comments on the minutes?
No.
If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting with the changes that Ed just pointed out.
One change, okay.
And I, Steve Purcell, second it.
All right, thanks, Steve. All right, Josh, we'll take a roll call on this.
Ed?
Yes, sorry.
Leonie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. Hi, Janet.
Aye.
Welcome. All right, we're going to move to the first public comment for our meeting tonight. I do want to preface this agenda item by saying I think a number of you folks may have joined tonight to express your inputs, comments, feelings on the discussion for the town clerk. I will mention to you that it's highly unlikely that we will be discussing that tonight. This is our first night where we're getting into Article 3, which obviously the town clerk is in Article 3. But we have a number of items that come before that. So I'm envisioning that we probably will not get to it. We may, but we probably won't. And that would probably be taken up next week at our meeting on the 6th of January. So I will remind everyone that you have a 3-minute limit, and we will most likely not have a two-way discussion. Just let us know what you have to say. So if anyone wants to talk, you can raise your hand. Mr. Wood.
Good evening. Not too many meetings start at 6. This is pretty good. Hopefully you'll get out of here early. I've got really just a couple items to discuss. One is there was a little bit of confusion about the open meeting law this week. And if the members haven't taken the training, I would suggest that everyone go ahead and take the training. So as you know, the town clerk can tell you the agenda has to be posted. I think that the agenda item tonight on Article 3 is pretty broad, which means that during the meeting, anyone can talk about, anyone on the membership can talk about any item under Article 3, and it would be within the scope. I understand that the team wants to go through a certain sequence, which makes sense to me, but it is on the agenda, so a reasonable person would say it's there. In addition to posting, the confusion was over the email that I sent that thankfully was forwarded on to all members. During the, it's the agenda that gets posted. So the period prior to the meeting, you don't have a restriction on documentation and distribution. In fact, you can introduce documents during the meeting itself. They don't have to be attached to the agenda. It doesn't have to be posted. So once it's there, it becomes public record. Once it's emailed, it becomes public record. So it's open to review and discussion. among the counselors. And that's true of correspondence. And one thing we're often, sorry, I should have identified myself. I'm Bill Wood, 388 Hayward Street, Bridgewater, also on the town council. One thing we often discuss on the town council is the fact that, and any member board really, you should try not to email, work around between members when you think it's going to hit a quorum. And that's true even if you don't intend it. So if one member emails a second member who emails a third member, it's pretty quick and easy to get to a quorum by accident. And that's frowned upon by the open meeting law. But my main point tonight is related to the email that I sent. And I'll just read one paragraph out of it. I'm hoping that, you won't get to it tonight. You'll get to it at the next meeting. I'm hoping that you'll take some time to review the content and the attachments and take a look at some of the language at the state and the municipal level. We had talked about Brockton City Council and how they elect the city clerk. The method employed by Brockton ensures that the clerk role is filled by a highly qualified candidate by allowing the council to elect the clerk for a three-year term. By putting the responsibility into the hands of the city council, Brockton is assured that it will have a professional manager in the office and not someone who can win a popular election without any prior qualifications or skills needed for that role. Having a term assigned ensures that the professional chosen is there without risk of removal. The letter's longer than that. I encourage everyone to read the full letter as well as the attachments that came with it. And hopefully you'll get to discuss it at the next meeting, if not this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. I see Carlton raising his hand.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up. Thank you, Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street. Follow up with Bill's comments on the open meeting law. Minutes that are submitted require, per our guidelines and requirements, require a discussion, a summary of all discussions, not just votes, and also any attachments or anything that's sent to the committee need to be publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. Anyone else? All right, well, if you change your mind, we have another segment towards the end of the meeting for those of you that may want to speak then. So going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, if everyone could go on mute, I'd appreciate that. All right, we'll move into our old business. And the first item here on the agenda, we had a brief discussion a couple of weeks ago on whether or not we wanted to change our meeting dates from the first and third Wednesday to possibly the second and fourth to accommodate those folks that may want to attend the planning meeting. We have a conflict, meaning that we meet the same time the planning board meets, I guess, certain times. So we didn't vote on it last time because we had a few members that weren't present. We decided to pick up the discussion again tonight. So I think the one issue that we have is with our secretary, Josh. We tried to pick dates that were good for him so that he could attend. He has other conflicts with other committees that he represents. So that was kind of why we chose the first and third Wednesday. For those months like this month that have 5 Wednesdays, we meet also on the 5th Wednesday. So is anyone on the committee want to say anything more about changing the date, or are we okay as going as we've planned since June?
So this is Tom. I like the first and third and then potentially 5th Wednesday option, because it gives us an extra option. I know it does interfere with the planning board meeting, but if we continue to meet at 6, if anybody really needed to, they could probably jump off at 7 and go to the planning board meeting on any particular day.
Mhm.
That's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in?
Go with no.
Okay, so I guess I'm not sure we need to vote on this or not. It was just a discussion. And, but why don't we go ahead? If I'll accept a motion for someone to say whether we just keep the existing schedule or revise it.
I mean, Thomas Golden, motion to continue on the current meeting schedule we have, which is the first, third, and potentially fifth Wednesdays of the week
Mhm.
of each month.
Okay, is there a second?
I, Steve Purcell, second it.
All right, any further discussion? All right, Josh, we'll take a roll on this.
Okay. Ed,
Yes?
Leoni,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thanks, Josh. All right, next item was actually submitted by Cleone a couple of weeks ago. And this was to consider using gender neutral language in the charter. Cleone was not able to attend our last meeting, so we decided to push it off to tonight. She's here, which is good. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share my screen. Cleone and I had a discussion this week. I had gone through the charter looking for opportunities for any changes, and we found a few. We've actually found a few more than we had discussed at the last meeting. I'd like to run through those with the committee, and then we can discuss and vote on those tonight. So let me share my screen. I don't know if you can't see it yet, right?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so what we looked for were any references to he or she, him or her, himself, herself, chairman, things like that were that represented a specific gender. The goal here is to try and have pronouns that obviously are gender neutral. And, we've done a little bit of research on this, and a lot of towns are actually doing this as they do their reviews. So I think it makes sense, and we can have further discussion about whether or not it makes sense. There aren't a lot of changes here, but I'll walk them through with the committee. So the first one here, actually, what you see is anything in green is something that has come up for possible change. In Article 2, we found right here under this statement, any counselor who has been finally convicted of a criminal offense involving misconduct in any elective or appointed public office, trust, or employment at any time held by him or her, and we replace that with simply that counselor shall be deemed to have vacated the office. Now, I don't know, any suggestions on how we want to do this? Do we want to vote on each of these separately? Do we want to go through them and then vote once, or do we want to vote every single change? Any opinions on that?
Why don't you go through them and then
Come back.
if at the end we just want to vote on all of them?
Okay. All right. So that's the first one.
I'm not
Sorry if
speaking
I'm-
for the group. If anybody else disagrees, please tell me I'm wrong, but
I agree.
Go through them all, and then if there's an issue, we can deal with it then.
Okay. Next one here is under section 2.3, C3. The council president shall be recognized as the official head of the town for all ceremonial purposes. And the council president, or it used to say his designee, will now say the council president's designee. Okay. I hope I don't make you dizzy by scrolling through here. All right, so this is section 3.3, which is actually part of the new, the recall provision. Item D here says an officer sought to be removed may be a candidate, it said, to succeed him or herself. So removed the pronoun and basically just said maybe a candidate for reelection. And unless the officer requests otherwise in writing, the town clerk shall place the officer's name on the ballot without nomination. So you can see in red what we're replacing. Next one down, the incumbent shall continue to perform the duties of office until the recall election. If then re-elected, the officer shall continue in office for the remainder of the unexpired term. Going further down, says here, removed upon the qualification of his successor, we'll just say the successor. And then further down, within 5 days after receiving notification of his election, we just say the election. The incumbent shall be deemed removed and the office vacant. Okay, moving down on item H here. No person who has been recalled from an office or has resigned from an office while recall proceedings are pending against that person shall be appointed to any town office within 2 years. All right, moving down. That was the spot that had the most changes. There's a few other miscellaneous ones.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
We just passed the section that had to do with town clerk.
excuse me, Adeline. This is just the committee that's discussing this.
Okay.
Could you go on mute, please?
Could I just ask the question of when
No,
will
you can,
public
no, you
comment
cannot.
happen?
Sorry. You can ask it during public comment.
Okay.
Thank you. Could you go on mute, please? Thank you. Okay, under Article 6, this is where we found chairman. So the council president shall call a joint meeting of the town council, the regional school committee chairperson, or the chairperson's designee.
So I do have a question on this one.
Yeah.
Since it's the school committee, do we have to keep it as chairman if their governing document names that person as chairman, not chairperson?
I
Scott,
guess,
this might be you.
yeah, I think that's a good question, but this is the town charter. So, you know, I think what we're trying to do here is make it gender neutral.
Yeah.
Whether or not the school committee documents reflect that or not, this is what.
Okay.
Can we say community chair instead of chairperson? I'm going to take a quick look to see what they have.
Okay. Community chair?
Yeah, they use the term chair. Just chair.
Just chair?
Mhm.
So should we just make it school committee chair instead of chairperson?
Or the chair's designee?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, or the
Chairs. Yeah.
I don't know why it's doing this, but okay. Thank you for that. That was good. Fortunately, we don't have a whole lot of changes. Okay, we have another one here. This is not related to the school system. I believe this would be from the chair of a multi-member body. So we can either leave it as chairperson or we can say chair.
I say we make it chair just for consistency.
All righty. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah.
Ed, the chair that you changed in the school committee part, should that be chair apostrophe S?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think you did it on the second chair.
Yeah. Okay. I will correct that without, I don't know if I can find it right this second. Was it? Oh, this was a school committee?
Yeah.
Correct.
So keep going up.
I meant to say it early, I tried to say it early, but then I realized I was on mute.
Was that it there? Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Okay. So that's it. Do we want to go back and vote individually or vote them all as one batch?
And we voted as one batch.
Yeah, we can.
Cleone, you make the motion. It was your idea.
Sure, no worries. I, Cleone Mainville, motion to include gender neutral pronouns throughout the charter where applicable.
Okay, is there a second?
I, Thomas Golden, second that motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, if not, then Josh, we'll need a roll call on this.
Ed,
Yes?
Cleone,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
Darren,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, there we are. All right, so that completes that agenda item. The next item is now to begin relooking at Article 3. Scott had provided a straw proposal, which all of you should have received. I know we're also supposed to have Matt join us tonight to review the resolutions which the library trustees had sent a while ago, which I hope you've all had a chance to review. I don't see him on right now. I know he said he had a family dinner, but he was going to try and get out of it early.
I do know the chairperson of the library committee. I do see her on here, or the library trustees is on here.
And who was that?
Connie. Yeah.
I don't.
I don't know if I can unmute. It's Constance. That's all I can see. Hold on. I'm trying to unmute her.
I'm here. Can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me now?
Yep.
Oh, hi, Constance.
Hi.
Do you go by Connie?
I go by Connie, I sure do.
Great,
Um,
okay.
I would prefer if you could wait to get into your discussion until Matt is able to join us. He is the one that headed our ad hoc committee going back a number of months, and we did have then a very spirited discussion among the trustees, which resulted in these resolutions. But he is the one that can really speak the clearest to any
Okay.
questions that you might have. So if we can wait for Matt, that would be great.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Thank you. Appreciate your
Alrighty.
feedback on that. All right, then Scott, I think what I'm going to do is turn it over to you. And then maybe you can share your screen and we can start discussing some of your recommendations. And then when Matt joins, maybe we then stop and go to the specific, to the library trustee discussion. Is that all right?
All right.
Okay.
Let me get my document up here. It's not what I wanted to share. Can everybody see?
Article 3, yep.
There we go. Everybody see that just fine?
Yes.
And I've got my comments over here to the side. So what I did is I set everything up as whatever is in blue and underlined. Those are just the simple changes from, the capitalization, some grammar changes. For example, right here under 3-2, instead of the numeric 9, it's changed to actually writing out the word 9. And I don't think there's anything controversial in any of that. And
Can we
then we
actually
get
go back up?
down.
I had a comment from line 12 through 15.
12 through 15, okay.
So
And on the first page?
yes.
Okay.
Correct. So if I recall correctly, we had a comment from an employee, I believe a police officer, that made a comment in reference to not being able to do a detail because they're also considered an employee of Bridgewater. I wanted to kind of explore that a little bit more. Is my recollection correct? Did anybody else remember reading that comment?
I'm not sure that was necessarily, you said a detail. I think that was to be on a committee, a town committee, because they were an employee.
Yeah, you can see the original language here from line 14. It says that in order to be eligible for an elective office, you would not be able to be employed by the town or the school district in any capacity. And that I've got that portion struck out for this recommendation, which is why I was going to get to that in a second here. Anything that's highlighted in yellow is what I consider to be some sort of a substantive change and something that would be a more robust discussion. So I wanted to start off with just looking at the items that are in the blue underline. I think that's a formatting error on my part. That's not supposed to be blue and underline. That's supposed to be highlighted. Oops. Bear with me. Yeah, this has to do with the recall petition. Let me fix that. We'll change that to highlighted. So yeah, anything in here with just the blue and underlined and no highlighting, I'll make a motion to adopt those changes as they are.
So those are all grammar, capitalization, et
Yes.
cetera.
Yeah, so the key was up on the first page here, spelling, grammar, capitalization type changes.
Okay,
So I
Someone
could have moved to adopt the blue and underline changes without any highlighting.
There were a couple of grammatical things that I noticed further down
Okay.
that I don't know if you want to include now or when we go through the highlights.
Yeah, I guess, procedurally, if we get a second, then we move into discussion and we can add those in.
Hey, Scott, can you try to zoom it in just a little bit? We have a comment in the chat box that it's hard to see. Thank you.
How's that? Is that better?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
So I down Boston seconded, waiting for a second.
All right. Ed?
okay, was there any further discussion? I think, did Cleone say she had? I'm sorry, did you hear me?
I heard you. Cleone, do you have, where were those other ones that you saw?
So under 3-3, section 3.3, let's see where, lines 17 and 14, 17 and 18. I didn't understand it, and I suspect that some punctuations will make it a little bit more clear.
Uh, 17 and 18.
So the sentence begins after there too. Starts with they, right? It's a long sentence, but it's got punctuation throughout it.
You know, well, on my copy, it didn't. Let's see. A little bit on 16. Let me read it through again.
The sentence says they shall be dated, shall be addressed to the town council, that sentence?
The blank form. You know, the numbers on yours is, we're skipping a couple of lines, so I'm sorry, I'm a little disoriented here. The blank form shall be issued by the town clerk with said clerk's signature and official seal. Like, yeah, right there. The blank form shall be issued by the town clerk, comma, with said clerk's signature, comma, and official seal attached thereto.
Yep, that helps.
So comma after town clerk and comma after signature.
And official seal, comma. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I can accept that as a friendly amendment. Yeah, Darren, you seconded it. this
Yes, I
motion,
agree with that. That's
Okay, do we have any other comments, Cleone?
Not on punctuation, no.
Okay, anyone else?
I will say that entire section is very difficult to read. And it's a very cumbersome process. And that, I think when we get to the substantive portion, that should be a discussion that we have.
Yeah.
Well, so Scott, since you point that out, there is a feature in Microsoft Office that's readability level. I think when we get to the end, we should run it through there and see if we can tweak as needed.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be a challenge in Word, especially when you're using this review function. There's so many different options, and it really does a number on your eyes, that's for sure.
All right. So that's
All right,
all
so
I have.
So we have a motion pending, a seconded pending with those two changes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any other, again, no more comments, then Josh, we'll take a roll call.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Darren,
yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay.
Okay. And so I guess we'll start at the beginning and proceed until the end here. Coming into the substantive material, the very first one here is what we were just talking about, where under the current language of what was proposed, it prevents any town or school district employees from holding an elected office. And I guess the bigger question is, what is the temperature of this committee? Do you want to keep that? Do you want to get rid of that? Right here, I have that language struck, other than you can't hold more than one elected or appointed town office. So if you're a town councilor, you can't be on the zoning committee or, things like that. And I think it's important that we keep that in, just me personally, because if you start allowing people to have positions on multiple committees, you run a potential for conflicts of interest.
Right.
Maybe not strictly under the statute, but at least the appearance of a conflict of interest. I'm just curious what everyone else thinks.
Why did you cut off the employment part? To be employed by the town or the Bridgewater Regional School District, are you slashing that out?
Yes, I've got that cut out because I think it's fair that if you're otherwise eligible for an elected office in this town, for example, my wife is a member, she's a teacher in the school district. She has no interest in running for elected office, but she would be prohibited from running for a town council position. And those two positions have very little to do with each other. So I think we're excluding a number of people who may want to contribute to this town if we have that language in there.
So Scott, I do recall in our prior form of government, we did have at least one select person at the time, maybe there were multiple, that had elected offices as selectmen, but also were employees. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. Because there was the perception of a conflict of interest. There was nothing that said that they had to excuse themselves from any votes that might impact their employee positions. I mean, they could do so voluntarily, but there was nothing that forced them to do that.
Well, Ed, I don't know what the condition was back then, but I know the state ethics laws are pretty clear that, for example, when I was on the town council, once my wife became an employee of this school district, I would have to recuse myself from any portion of the budget discussions that had to do with anything close to being about her potential salary.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, okay, you may have a town employee who gets elected to the town council, but if that's the choice of the voters, who are we to say that that shouldn't happen? You know, the state ethics laws are still there, and they do prevent them from taking part in any deliberation or votes that could have a direct impact on them financially. So,
So would it make sense to reference MGL here, do you think, just so that anyone that's concerned that there might be a conflict of interest, that it's covered already?
yeah, I think we could add in some sort of a reference to it. I'm not sure what that language would look like. Do you have any
Okay.
recommendations?
Could you put like at the end, or other elected or appointed town office, so long as this is not a violation of the Mass General Law, blah blah blah.
What's really a state ethics
Right.
laws,
Or
right?
state ethics, standard blah or something like that.
Yeah. Scott, I think if we're in agreement that maybe we want to add something like that, it might take some time to research exactly what it is. So maybe that's something you can have as a takeaway,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
And we can table this discussion and refine that language and come back.
So Scott, can I pause for a second? Folks that are not on the committee, this is a reminder that we're not supposed to use the chat function, and try to keep those comments for the public comment at the end of the Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so it sounds like we're in agreement that we think it's okay for employees, meaning school employees as well as town employees, can hold at least one elected office. That's something we're changing in the charter. Right now, they cannot do that. And I guess the issue is, is the town protected enough from any potential, issues? And if we are, because we have enough at the state level to protect us, then I think we're okay. If not, then we need to, I think, make sure that the charter contains the necessary language to offer that protection. So Scott, why don't you go back and research this a little bit further?
Sure.
I think everyone, it likes the concept, but I think we just got to craft it in such a way that it meets the need.
Yeah, I can do that. I think when we look at the state ethics laws, and then if we do agree to have some sort of a recall provision, I think those two changes to the charter dovetailing together would certainly provide enough protection against any sort of conflicts of interest.
Okay. Does anyone know if Matt has joined yet?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. Scott, are we in a position maybe to break from your thing here and turn it over to Matt? Scott, or do you want to finish a section before we go to Matt?
Yeah, I can stop here and we can go over to Matt while he's here, and that way we're not keeping him longer than we need to.
Okay.
All right,
Great.
I'll stop sharing.
All right. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Glad you can join. Hopefully your family dinner wasn't cut too short.
We did okay, thanks. I'm glad we got back in before things had progressed too far.
Okay, great. Hey, I have your document here that I could share on the screen if you'd like, and maybe we could have you spend a few minutes to kind of summarize each of the resolutions.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, let me find that.
Okay. I'd also like to point out Connie Francis here. I'm sorry, Connie, I'm going to butcher your last name. The chair of the trustees is also attending.
Yep, we actually had her talk earlier.
Okay.
So thank you. All right. So we received this, I don't know, a month or so ago from the library board of trustees.
Can you zoom in, please?
Sure. So Matt, I think there are 8 resolutions that pertain to the charter, and there's a few others to the administrative code.
Correct.
Can you sort of give us an overall, before you go into each resolution, but sort of the background of why the library trustees don't feel that what's in the charter today is adequate enough?
Okay. So the way the charter is set up now, it's got some very minimal provisions about the board, and then adopts a series of the MGL that apply to town libraries. Of those provisions, 3 of them don't apply to town entities that have a city form of government. So it's unclear whether the specifically that the trustees have control of the property of the library, that the town treasurer acts as the treasurer for the board, and that the trustees have to provide a report every year regarding the property under their control. It was unclear to us whether or not when the charter was amended, whether those were intended to be provisions that applied to the trustees or they didn't. We think so. Things were kind of ambiguous. So we started addressing. We took a hard look at what we thought what powers the trustees had, what the intentions were, and how we thought things should be changed to be able to give us the power and the authority to carry out what we thought the will of the town was at the time of the charter amendment. Basically, it falls down into really 3 categories. One, The trustees believe that the Bridgewater Public Library is a institution separate from the department, the library department with the town, which means that property owned by the library, gifts given to the library are really the property of the library and not subject to the town's general budget or not, and not included in part of the town's general operating procedure. You know, we believe that the town intended the trustees to be able to functionally and constructively deal with the hiring and maintenance of the library director. And we believe that the trustees shoof be able to raise money for the library separate from the town's operating budget. And really, that's all of the provisions we proposed kind of fall into those three categories.
Okay. Can I ask one question before you jump into the resolutions? So for these things that were unclear to the trustees in the questions that were being asked, was there any discussion about sitting down with the town attorney to find out legally whether or not the trustees, you know, what positions were being taken with that or not?
We forwarded comments to the town, asking for clarity from the town's attorney, and did not get a response back. We also sent in a inquiry to the financial director, and rather than getting a response back from them, they met with the library director, who came back and told us that from the town's position, the library is merely an extension of the library department, and that any funds and property given over to the library are under the control of the town and subject to the town manager and the library director's discretion on what they're going to do with it.
Okay. So this is almost like seceding from the union, huh?
We don't think it's seceding from the union. We think it's kind of carving out, trying to reestablish the intent at the time. You know, the board of trustees was retained as an elected position, was retained as the only other elected position, along with the selectmen.
No, the clerk.
And the clerk. But as opposed to all the other committees in town, and you know, from reading the 2009 plan, it seemed like it was fairly clear that they wanted it. There was the intention for it to be an independent body.
Okay.
And it's not functioning as that. You know, if the intention is not for it to, this is our interpretation of it. If the town does not want it to function as an independent body, I don't see why that it should be. I certainly don't see why the trustees should be elected. If all they are is a advisory body that has no power or control, it doesn't seem any point to it being an elected position.
Okay. But is the intent that the funds that the library needs to operate would still come out of the town budget, or would you have your own separate budget and your own?
I think after 10 years, the library department managing the physical plant and the operating budget has been well established. I don't see, we don't want to kick over the apple cart. Things along the support and maintenance of the library seem to be progressing fine. I don't see any reason why the trustees need to step in and start managing whether the roof's getting repaired or go back to any of those situations. But as far as the trustees being able to say whether or not the library collection should be liquidated, it's to stretch something to an absurdity, but can the library director sell all the books without the trustees' permission? Or something along those lines, that the property, what is intrinsically thought of as the library, the books, the collections, are those held in trust by the trustees for the benefit of the town, or is it part of the library department or the town property to be disposed of as the town sees fit?
Okay,
You know, we've set out what we think it should be, but that's, you know, obviously it's up to the town to decide whether or not they want that to be handled that way or they don't.
okay. So I think we understand the overall intent now of what the library trustees want to see happen. So why don't you walk us through each resolution? And do you want to wait and have questions at the end, or do you want to have us ask questions on each resolution?
We can deal with them as each resolution comes up. These are our suggestions to you. They're certainly not, you know, we're not trying to tell you guys how to run your committee, but just what we thought was we tried to make things as easier as possible for you if that's what you decided to go with.
Okay.
So the first resolution is merely a kind of a clearer summary of what we just went through, that we felt that the charter and the code were not clear as the intent, and that things needed to be set forward in a clearer message. Resolution 2 applies to the theory that I just discussed, that the Bridgewater Public Library is more of an independent institution and not just an extension of the library department. The Bridgewater Public Library is managed by the trustees and supported and personnel supplied by the library department, but it is not just the library department. Resolution 3 applies to the trustees being able to either, you know, approve of or disapprove of the liquidation of any of the collections of the library or any of the property of the library. We talked to this resolution was discussed with the director to make sure that it complied with his ability to manage getting rid of out of date or and no longer material documents, papers like newspapers, things that have been outdated.
So right now that cannot happen in the present.
Right now it can happen at the director's whim. There's nothing under the town position, anything in the library can be disposed of by the director. You know, it's got to follow the state laws for disposal of surplus property, but it's the director's sole discretion about what is retained or what's not retained.
So this basically gives the Board of Trustees input to that process?
Correct. Anything that's going to be disposed of, you know, any collections that need to be disposed of have to be approved by the trustees.
Okay.
Ed, I have a question.
Go. Yeah.
Matt, it's the Board of Library Trustees. Is there a trust agreement? Is there an actual document?
There is not a trust agreement.
Okay.
The way it functioned prior to 2010 is under the Mass General Law. The statute says that the trustees have control over all the property of the library, and that any money portioned for the maintenance and supply of the library are put under the control of the trustees.
Okay. And then
those are the provisions that are exempted from any entity under a city form of government.
Okay. And a question on the budget. So does the library itself receives funds every year from the town's operating budget? Correct. All right. And is that just for the maintenance of the building, or does that go into the entire library budget? And
it's the entire library budget is run by the town. It's all through the library department. The trustees are supposed to be consulted as the budget's being developed. To date, that usually consists of the director giving a copy of the proposed budget to the trustees. I haven't been on the board for a full year yet, so I haven't been through the whole budget process, but my understanding is that there are not, the meetings that are supposed to happen between the town manager and the trustees have not been occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Scott was saying. Can you walk us through a scenario where the role, if the trustee does have the level of authority that you're seeking, would help in the situation, basically comparing what is now and what would be if the change is made based on these resolutions? Is there a scenario that comes up that you can walk us through?
Sure. Yeah, and then again, this is kind of adopting something extreme, but say that there is we have not, and I want to specify that we have not had a conflict with the current director about any kind of collections, but as part of the Black Lives Matter movement, that there was a drive to increase that collection, and the director did not agree with the trustees targeting of that, and decided rather than upping that collection, he would decide to get rid of items that were part of that collection. Right now, the trustees had no say in whether those things would be liquidated. The same thing holds true if you have a director that for some reason decided to get rid of books about the Holocaust. It's completely at the director's discretion about what's made available, what's retained, and what's not. So those are the examples that we've got. And it's, again, Jed has never even implied that anything like that was in his mind, but those, from the trustee's position, that's one of the reasons why we're there, is to be able to, the public watchdog over what's in the library and what's maintained. And we don't feel that we have that power right now.
So based on, I think what I'm hearing you say, Matt, is that the board is looking for more accountability over the director?
Yeah, more accountability over the director, and control in putting some actual substance behind the idea that the trustees are maintaining the town's trust.
Yeah.
In the library collection.
Matt, if I can just, excuse me, if I can just interject, Matt, another example might be the two paintings that is in possession of the library. And they're very old, they're very valuable. And I don't know that we would have the authority to, if we decided to sell them or whatever we wanted to do with them. I don't know that we would have the, the wherewithal, the authority to do that as it stands now. And certainly with the other trust funds.
Yeah. Or conversely, if the town decided that they wanted to sell sell gifts to the library that had not been made with restrictions, the things donated to the library be sold and then used to support, a different part of the town's budget. But right now it's not. It's entirely within the realm, within the pot. It's possible.
So right now, the library director is really solely accountable to the town manager?
Correct.
Okay.
And one last question, because those stories were very helpful to see what a real life application would be. Is there a mechanism that you have in place where you are touching base with the community so that you are a real representation of the desires of the community?
Cleone, we are actually working on that now. We finally got our website up and running, And there is a mechanism, probably several mechanisms actually, but there is a dedicated area to the Board of Trustees, and citizens and patrons can communicate with us through that. And actually, I will be sending you a letter in the next week or two on how you can access that and our desire to receive input from the community. We've been working hard on that. And I think we had a few glitches that we just discovered yesterday, and we've got that, I think we've got that ironed out. So that is in the works, certainly.
And one of the issues is we haven't had a whole lot of ability to act in any way. So there hasn't been, other than running for election, there hasn't been any impetus to seek public input, really. So it's part of the whole process is, I think, is if we have more ability to act, we're going to need, and I believe that we should be held accountable for acting in the will of the public. I think hopefully if the trustees have a position that matters, then the elections matter. And if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, we should be voted out of office.
So Matt, are you saying basically that the Board of Trustees today, as it currently sits, is more of an advisory function?
Yes, there's no, it's completely advisory, and what few powers and obligations are actually put into the code are not, they're fairly disregarded. They're not,
Right, okay. Can we move on to resolution 4?
Sure. So section 3.2 again touches on the situation that Connie just discussed, where items given to the library under the current interpretation that the town has adopted are really gifts to the town and subject to, and I apologize, I had the reference, but I'm not drawing a blank on it, but are treated as donations to a town department, which are then transferred into the general fund. As I discussed, the library director had a meeting with the director of finance, and under their opinion, the director is the one that can determine whether those funds are spent or not. But really, that's still under the current town interpretation. That's just at the discretion of the town. Anything given over to the library really is property of the town and can be spent as the town sees fit, unless there's a gift restriction made on it.
Okay.
We'd like to see those, anything gifted to the library segregated and only, subject to the trustees' discretion and use. The way the statute, section resolution 5, right now, the statute is that the library director shall be recommended by the Board of Library Trustees. Again, this is not any statement of dissatisfaction with Jed. We're pleased to have him aboard, and we're happy to be included in the initial interview process with him. But his hiring was done without a recommendation from the Board of Trustees. We were happy to supply it afterwards. The trustees aren't given any documentation or information regarding the nature of the hiring of the director. And as far as I can tell, have no ability to, if the trustees lose confidence in the director, there is no function or ability to have the director removed.
Likewise, if the library director was doing a great job, but the town manager decided to remove the person, you would have no input to that as well.
We have no input. All we can do, and as I said, it was disregarded in this last process, is withhold or give a recommendation.
Okay.
In the last round, we tried to craft a recommendation to make it conditional upon getting some information and some other input on the annual review process. It was disregarded. And there's no recourse for the trustees if that happens.
Okay.
Resolution 6, again, is another outgrowth of the meeting the director had with the Bridgewater Director of Finance, because the town position is that the board has no authority or ability to control funds. The treasurer does not act, can't act. So we like the ability to hold and control funds, and therefore the town collector or treasurer would act as the treasurer for the board, as opposed to the board having to appoint the treasurer and go through the paperwork and bond posting that would entail.
Okay.
Resolution 7, again, if we are going to be in control of any property, we think that the board, and as originally required under the MGL sections, the board should be put out a annual report detailing what actions it's taken over the course of the year and what property has either been given or has been given over and disposed of and under their control. And that should be made a public document.
Okay, so that would be it for the charter changes, and then what follows would be administrative code.
It's what after reviewing the code, it's changes that we thought mirrored, would have to be adopted to mirror the changes in the charter.
Okay. All right, we're not gonna go through those because that's not in our purview right now. I guess another question I would have is, as the board was discussing these things, did you reach out to any other towns to find out, what other towns are doing relative to the Board of Trustees? Are they all pretty much following, mass state law, or are they doing it differently, I guess? Is there a sort of a best in class view of the Board of Library Trustees? And
Ed, I can respond to that. Back when we started looking at these issues a few months ago, I did a little research to see what other communities in Massachusetts that have adopted a similar form of government to ours. In other words, with a town council, town manager, strong town manager form of government. And I found, I believe, 6 towns that had made this kind of adoption. And I would say most of them have much more clearly delineated responsibilities for the library trustees. And 2 of them in particular, the town of Winthrop and the town of Watertown, with regard to gifts and bequests, I will quote you, actually, they're both the same. All funds or other property which the town may receive by gift or bequest or otherwise for library purposes shall be administered by the said board in accordance with the terms of such gift, bequest, or otherwise. And I think that's Winthrop. Same would be true of Watertown. And then the other item that jumps out is that both of them have the involvement of the trustees in the hiring of the town manager. In Winthrop, the trustees have the responsibility to elect, subject to the approval of the town manager, a director of the library who shall be charged with the day-to-day administration of the library system. And in Watertown, they also the trustees have the authority to appoint a director of the library and to set the director's salary within the salary range set by the town manager. And I think if you look at the trustee handbook for the trustees in Massachusetts, one of the premier responsibilities of the trustees is to appoint the library director, to be actively involved. In fact, the quote is that under personnel in their handbook, one of the most important responsibilities of a board of trustees is to hire the library director. And I think we are charged with making the recommendation. But in order to make a thoughtful recommendation, one has to be involved in the interview process, the review of the credentials and so forth. And we did, about 15 months ago, we were involved in Bridgewater in selecting a new library director. Two of us were involved in that process, but we had to really advocate for ourselves in order to be included in the final interviews. And I would say at that point, we were allowed to ask questions, and our input was received. But I think that needs to be solidified a little bit, so that is something that does take place every time. We need to select a new library director. So.
Okay. Are there any downsides to going forward with this sort of new view that you're proposing? I mean, it all sounds like it's positive to me. I'm just wondering if, there's always two sides. What would the opposition side say? People that might be against this, what would they say? That the library trustees are doing a good job today and there needs to be no changes, so whatever, I don't know.
Well, I would, if I was on the administrative side, I would say that if you were in a situation where there were budget constraints and you had a board of trustees that refused to assist in raising operating money, refused to liquidate property necessary to keep the library up and running, it'd be an independent body and would negatively impact the administration's ability to do what it wanted as it wanted. So I would say that looking at it from the other side, I don't necessarily believe that would be a bad thing. But that would be the other look at it. Is removing power of the town manager to control and operate what may be considered a town asset.
I think most people would think that the library sort of runs independently anyways, right?
That was my impression before I took my seat as a trustee, and I would imagine that's what most people would imagine. Most people, I would imagine, think that the trustees have some ability to control and impact the management of the library. I don't think that they would think that it's merely an advisory position.
Okay. Do you think if all these resolutions got into the charter and if they ultimately passed, do you think that the library would sort of get to a new level? Do you think that there would be, I'm trying to think of the future. What would the future look like for the library if these things all got in and passed? How would it be different from what it is today?
My hope for how it would change is that the trustees would be held to a task of building up a funds for the emergency funds for the library, and would be a caretaker of the library's property. I think right now it's go along and get along, but I think the trustees is more, if they were given more authority, should be held more accountable to making putting the library in a better place to deal with future future uncertainty. Right now, as a trustee, I couldn't advocate trying to raise money for the library because I don't have any faith that that such money would necessarily would go into the library's coffers. Right now, I think the Friends of the Library organization would be the only way to work towards that.
Okay.
I would agree with what Matt has to say. I think it might motivate the trustees to get more involved in perhaps setting up another trust or being more involved with fundraising because we no longer have a Friends organization. And they used to be the group that would do the primary fundraising for extra things outside of the budget, like the museum passes and those kinds of things. And I think, I know that some trustees are interested in doing something along that line. So I think we would be able to pursue that, were these resolutions to, go into effect.
I mean, Ed, what I really hope for is that if the library trustees have a more defined role and ability to act, that there is a greater drive for people to seek out the position. I think right now the board, out of the 9 of us, 3 of us are appointed, 6 have been elected. If the library board of trustees is a more functionally independent body that is doing good work and doing important work, it would drive people to participate, have elections where more than one person is trying to fill a seat, and will be accountable to the, and be accountable to the town on an elected basis. I think that was one of the reasons why the board was retained as an elected position. I'd like to see it come back into that, fall under that role again.
Yeah. So I guess if I'm a citizen of Bridgewater and I'm eventually going to vote on this, if it ends up making it, through the council, I think people are going to say, or they may question, how is it going to benefit the town by giving the board of trustees of the library, more accountability for what goes on in the day-to-day operation of the library. So I think that maybe the board, you've provided some good information here. For me personally, I think it would be helpful to sort of say, how are things going to look if this passed? What would it do for the town? How would it benefit the town?
Well, the board is, we can address that and come up with a statement, but, we've given our position on what we would like to see fit, but the way that the code is set up now can't stay. If our amendments aren't adopted, a different set of amendments have to be, what's in the charter right now. We're trying to resolve that in favor of the board having some independence and ability to control things.
Okay.
But if that's not the way the town goes, then, the charter's amendments need to be adopted that state that those provisions do not apply, it's still got to be cleaned up, either giving the board more independence, or it's got to be cleaned up stating that the board doesn't have any of those powers and that it's only advisory, and that it doesn't have control of the corpus of the library, doesn't have the ability to raise money. I think the way it's set up is ambiguous and frankly misleading. If you have a board of trustees that doesn't have the ability to have any power or input, it should not be called a board of trustees. There's no trust, there's no duty, there's nothing there to have, and why have it an elected position at all? It just doesn't make sense the way it stands now.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Any questions, comments from the committee?
Actually, I had a quick question. So I understand that there are 9 board members. If you don't get to that number and it passes that, there is more authority given to the trustee, how will that impact the library from operating effectively if you don't have 9?
There are always 9. If they aren't, if no one sits for election, it's appointed. The way the statute, the way the charter is written now, anybody who has recently run for office and not been elected is given consideration first. But after that, it's the board puts forward nominations, and the town will appoint somebody to fill those positions. I lost the election I ran for and was appointed the next term when one of the trustees resigned, and then we had 2 open positions in the last election, and town people who expressed interest, I think, were appointed, or they were either, Connie, were Robin and Andrew write-ins, or were they appointed?
They were both write-ins.
Okay. So, but regardless, there aren't unfilled positions. If nobody is elected, then it's appointed.
Anyone else?
I have a question about the timing. When they would hope these resolutions will be voted on, because of our situation as to when we can make recommendations.
Are you asking, Darren, is that a question for me, you mean?
No, for Matt. When were you hoping to have these resolutions voted on? The next election, or?
I think they should. My position is that the way the charter is written now is that it's not functional. It needs to be changed one way or the other, and they should be adopted, as soon as something can be approved. So, we'd like to see them as soon as possible, but the situation be resolved one way or the other.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Darren?
Yes, but I mean, when they say soon as possible, is the soonest would that be the next election? I mean, or would that be further down? I mean, I guess that would be a question for you, Ed.
I'm sorry, Dan. We'd like to see it in the next election, but I certainly do not want to come here and tell you guys how to run and how to manage your committee. When I was here a month ago, I know the amount of work that you guys are doing and what's going through this. We've gotten by 10 years with the way the charter's written now. We can certainly make it through an election or 2 if we have to. We'd like to see it in the next election, but if that doesn't happen, we're not gonna run around bad mouthing you guys or resign en masse. We feel like we've got a job to do, and you guys have a job to do. We're not going to tell you how to do it.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Anyone else on the committee?
Got a couple of things on this. And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the resolutions cover 2 big categories. One is management of the library through the library director, and also management of the property of the library. Would you say that's fair?
I would say it's not exact. We don't want to. We're not saying we've got to go back to 2010, and we don't want to manage the library. We're not going to run the personnel department. What we want to have is functional oversight over both those areas.
Right. I'm just saying that's pretty much what's covered in talking about the library director and then the property of the library.
Right. That's what we feel the proper role of the trustees, especially now after, like I said, it's been 10 years of with the situation that it is now. I think the trustees should have oversight over the hiring and firing of the director. Trustees should have oversight over the maintenance and display of the library collection, and the trustees should have oversight and given to the library. And really, those are the areas that we want to get addressed.
Right. And I think you said earlier that there's no trust agreement in place.
There is not.
And that might be something that we want to raise up to the town manager to see if we can get some sort of a trust agreement in place to clarify some of the duties regarding the property. My question regarding the property is, are you able to identify which property is gift property and which was purchased by the town?
I'm sorry. So I went back through all the records when in 2010, when the conversion happened, there was never an action by the Board of Trustees to assign property back to the town. From my read, the trustees should own anything that was in the property, anything that was owned prior to 2010 and anything purchased after 2010 or given after 2010 would be the property of the town. But it's a mess.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm a corporate lawyer. If I could design it myself, I would put an actual trust in place. Trustees would be in charge of, but I don't. We didn't feel that it was our place to. We were trying to work within at least the framework of what's already in the charter, and trying to put in a whole separate section like something like the housing trust. When I was looking, the trustees asked me to take lead on putting this together, and it just was something that I didn't think coming out of our group was something. If that's what this committee, I think that would be the right way for it. If I tie everything up in a nice little bow, that's what I think how it should function. But that's a big step, and a lot of work and a lot of expense, and I don't know that the town's ready to go there.
Yeah, it just seems like this whole trust needs to be more clearly delineated.
It's but it's not really it's not really a trust, and it's not the hard fact that we can't get around is if you look at what was traditionally a city government, in cities the library was separately chartered, had its own have its own section, was fully set out. The towns all had the MGL statutes that said how it was run. And, for those of us that were here in 2010, we know what was going on with the budget. We know that was happening with the town. We know what was happening with the library. There was a lot of moving parts, and people were just trying to get things to work and trying to get things, that the lights stayed on and people kept moving. And there were things that people could spend the time to look into and go into detail. And, it's nobody's fault, but just the nuts and bolts on how the library was going to work were things that, didn't get addressed because there were much bigger things and more important things to deal with. And, we're looking back at it now and trying to figure out the easiest way and the cleanest way to get that cleaned back up. This is our interpretation of how that can happen. But again, you guys have your job to do. And if you think there's a better way, or if you miss the mark on what the town really wants, that's in your committee's purview. It's not ours.
Scott, I'm wondering your question about a trust agreement with the town, would that, if one was established, would that negate the need for these charter changes?
No, I don't think it would. It would just shave the hairs off the words, if you will, just really clarify what goes where. Because my questions to Matt were really around, how do we know what is town property and what is library property managed by the trustees? Right. Are the computers, are the desks, are the chairs,
In the charter amendment that we put in, we specified that any property given over by the library department for the maintenance operation, including computers, the physical plant and fixtures, are not considered.
Right, and I saw that, and that was what led me to my question is, what is it right now?
Like I said, right now, I think it's anything, it's based on the time of purchase.
Yeah.
And like I said, if we don't go the direction that we're asking for, I think that the trustees really need to make a grant of property, make a grant giving all the property, that any property under their control, and turn it over to the town on an official basis.
All right. And is there any mechanism to segregate out property that was given in a gift versus that came from the town?
Right now, well, no, I mean, right now, the town position is that it's property given to the town unless there's restrictions in the gift itself. But anything given to the library is just given to the library department, and then grouped into the town budget.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Janet, Tom. Anyone else have questions or comments?
So Ed, I don't, but I also do feel obligated to point out that my wife is a trustee of the library, so I feel obligated to recuse myself from a lot of this.
Tom, when I was wondering about that when I saw your name pop up.
That would be it.
So some of this must resonate with you, though. I'm sure you've heard about it, right?
A little bit, once or twice.
Okay. And how about you, Janet? Anything on your end?
Well, I learned things about the trustees that I didn't realize that much, about it, as far as what they don't have control of. And it seems to make sense, a lot of things that he was saying, that they should have a little more control. I mean, what's the point of a trustee if they can't do some of the things that he was talking about? So I was educated.
Yeah. Okay, and is Steve still on? I don't see him. He must have dropped. Okay, well, I mean, it seems to me the bottom line here is, the committee, the Board of Trustees today is really serving as an advisory board. And the desire, it appears, is that they would like to take a more active role and have more accountability over what happens there, the property, the director, and so on and so forth. So I guess the question in my mind is, how far do we go? Do we accept all the resolutions? Do we say, yeah, we agree with it, we think it's a good thing? Or do we say, well, maybe we don't want to go that far. We're okay with a few of these resolutions, but we don't want to adopt it in total. Obviously this is the first time we're really having this discussion. So are there any suggestions on how to proceed with this? And by the way, Matt, thank you for your time. And I know you spent a lot of effort putting this thing together. I thank you. And Connie, thank you as well for chiming in. We appreciate it. You guys do a wonderful job for the town, and we certainly want to do, anything that we can do to help. But we also want to be able to substantiate the recommendations we make and feel comfortable that, we can articulate the benefit to the town.
No, we're certainly, if you guys have additional questions after you talk about it more, we're happy to address anything that you've got or put together anything else that you think you might need.
Okay. Any members have any suggestions on what they'd like to do with this at this point? Do you think we would be in a position to vote on something tonight, or would you rather think about it a little bit more and continue the discussion at a future point?
Personally, my preference would be, this is a lot of really good information. It allowed me to put some of the things that I read in context, and I would like an opportunity to go ahead and reread those with this additional information. The story was really important to me to understand how this plays out in real life. And on the other hand, I am sensitive to the time limit that we have, that we want to, kind of get this done. But I would also like an opportunity to hear, whether it be from the director or the opposing side, just to see if there's anything that additional that should be considered.
Okay,
I'd certainly encourage that. And I'm happy to come back if you guys want to address it, 2 weeks or a month from now. I'm happy to come back before the committee and answer any follow-up questions you might have at that time.
is the director privy to,
The director, we've included him in the discussion.
and supports it?
He has not expressed an opinion one way or the other over it. But we've included him in it. I don't think that he feels that it's his role to either approve or disapprove of the trustees' actions or the town's, or the administration's adoption of the charter. Frankly, I wouldn't want to put him in that position where he has to pick, if you want to make it just black and white where he has to pick supporting the trustees or supporting his boss, I would not ask him to make a decision on that. He certainly hasn't given us any. We modified several provisions as a result of concerns he expressed. So I think that says something towards his position on the provisions, but I would not ask him to take sides.
Okay. All right. Cleone, thank you for your feedback on that. Rest of the committee, anyone have a sense of next steps on this one?
I'm with Cleone. I think there's a lot of information here. There's a couple of changes that I would like to see in there. One about the property. I think if the town supplied the property, say if the town supplied a computer or a desk, the town should have the discretion then, if it wants to liquidate that computer for whatever reason, then that should be up to the town. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and we don't want to. We don't want to. The physical plant and fixtures are things that we don't want to. We're not anticipating that we are taking control of. We're not going back there. We're looking at the collections and things like that. Whether.
And I think that would be something I would just want to look over the language again. And then the other thing was the recommendation for the library director, a time limit to provide that recommendation. And if that recommendation doesn't come in, then the town manager could move forward with the hiring process. I don't want to see potentially in the future that a library director position could be held up because a recommendation simply isn't, there's no action on it.
So that would you would be interested in either, a recommendation or a denial of a recommendation would have to be made within a certain time period.
Right. 30 days, whatever, some sort of.
Whether he's recommended or not.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. We also had crafted this before the current. We are fully aware of the current director's role, but he is an employee at will. And frankly, the way that the material that we gave you doesn't address the fact that there's no ability for we had discussed, we put in our language that a renewal would require an additional recommendation from us. But an employee, as an employee at will, there's no continuation. So there's no ability for once a director is hired at will, there'd be no ability of the trustees to remove him. So I think it's something that we didn't address in our role, but I think should be adopted as part of the whatever the provisions that surround the director's hiring.
Okay.
All right, Scott, thanks for that input. I'm getting a sense from the committee that we probably need a little more time to consume what we've heard tonight and think about it a little bit and maybe pick it up again next week. So is there somebody that wants to make a motion to continue this discussion next meeting?
I, Darren Boston, would like to make a motion to review this information and discuss it further at the next meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Scott Pitta, second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Josh, we'll take a roll call on this.
Ed,
Yes,
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes,
Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
okay, thank you. All right, just checking in on the time here. It's 7:41. We have no new business, but I want to give the public another chance to chime in.
Hey, Ed, could we finish this earlier section that Scott had started, mostly related to that one sentence around elections real quick before the public comment, you think?
Sure, that's what I was just going to say. Do we want to go
Okay.
back and pick up on that and then maybe leave 10 minutes? So maybe like 7:50?
Yep.
All right, so Scott, why don't we go back and pick up where you left off again? Thanks, Matt and Connie, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
I had one question for Scott. I know we're looking at the yellow things, I think, right now, but what's the pink?
The
What-
pink is just where I had a comment. Just my own little reminder of things to talk about.
Okay,
Like right here, talking about where this section is struck out of an elected town clerk. Just my reminder, this is a much larger discussion. That's certainly not something we're going to get done in our time limit tonight. And this is just the language, I think, from the 2017 Rules and Procedures recommendation.
okay, I was just making sure it wasn't, that's,
Yeah, no, that was just something Microsoft Word did for me.
okay.
So I think we left off in here with the elected town, who's eligible to hold elective town office. And
Right, I think you were going to go back and kind of relook at that, Scott, right?
right.
Okay,
And then as we get down into, this is something, and this will need to be a larger discussion with the town clerk as well, but I think it's something we should look at. Every year, every time we have an election, we have two elections. We have one in April and we have another one in November. There are communities, I believe, that have their town or city election at the same time as the state or federal election. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't do the same thing. Now, I may be wrong, and this is something, before we elevate it and have a larger discussion with the town clerk, town attorney, I wanted to have a discussion with this committee to see if this is something we want to do. But it seems that we could save a good amount of money and time and effort by having all of the election. We already have all the election workers there for the regular state and federal elections. It really would simply cost us the cost of printing.
Which we have anyway from the April section.
Exactly.
plus
So-
you might get a better turnout on the town election, right?
Right. I mean, I know traditionally we do it in April, but one of my pet peeves is hearing somebody say, this is the way we've always done it. If you're not willing to change, you'll never improve. So I wanted to have this discussion with the committee, see if this is something we want to consider going forward.
And how would that affect the ones that are already, there's gonna be a time where somebody's gonna be in there longer because you're moving it to November. You just have to look at the turnover of where they are in the the rotation.
Right, right. And that it would cause a few town officials to have an extra 7 months on their term of service. If that's not something they're willing to do, then we have provisions to fill vacant seats. If they do want to continue, then no harm, no foul.
So the federal elections are always in November. Other state elections, I can't recall. Are it same time or different time?
It's usually in conjunction with the federal elections.
So that, does that imply there's only going to be one election per year?
Yes.
Because every time we have an election, the town actually has to, and the town clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the town council had to budget for renting that space from the school district. And then there's the cost of having the police details. There's the cost of, the electricity, the lights, and everything that goes on in that building, cleaning it up. Those are all expenses to the town that we really don't need to be doing twice a year.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's some value to looking at this. Perhaps we invite Mary Lee to our next meeting so we can spend more time discussing this with her.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember. Do we have an election every November? A state and federal, we don't have one every November, right? It's every 2
Every 2
years.
years.
And so there'll be 1 year that it's not, so it'd still be, you're having people go in on a Tuesday. How would that work? It sounds like good sense, if everybody's going anyways, but there's going to be an off year.
But
So
Janet, not to interrupt, but we would be doing it in April. You would just move it to November, so it would be consistent. So even in a year when there's not a state or federal election, ours would just be in November as well.
but on a Tuesday or a Saturday. So that's I'm just putting out there that it's not every November. So if you want to combine it with the federal and state, just how it's worded, I just wanted to ask.
Yep.
All right, so I think this is worth further discussion. Why don't we, again, I wrote down, we'll invite Mary Lee to the next meeting to talk about this with her.
Can we make sure, and I'm assuming too that you'd want to discuss the elected versus appointed town clerk. Can we combine those two discussions so that she doesn't have to attend more than one?
Sure, yep. Okay, Scott, you want to keep moving? Or,
You said you wanted 7:50 to cut off.
yeah, we got a couple of minutes, right?
We've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, so the next section is the library trustees. We know we're gonna further talk about that.
Right.
Then it's town clerk after that.
No, it's not. It's the recall.
So the recall
provision,
provision.
which, yeah, we don't really want to get into that now. That's going to have to be a more in-depth discussion as well. So, all right, why don't we call it right now, Scott, as far as going any further here?
I'm sure we have some citizens forum.
And, yeah, you want to stop sharing your screen?
All right.
Great, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Again, we try and end all of our meetings on time, so I want to make sure that we have ample time here for a few more citizens' comments. So again, state your name, your address, and we'll give you 3 minutes to talk. So I saw Carlton hand up first, so go ahead.
Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street, and I'm speaking to the committee as a former 10-year elected library trustee and several years as the chair. I went through the process of defending the loss of the library when the town budget was terrible. I had to go to the state to ensure that the town didn't close that library. We didn't talk about selling it, but closing it. Unfortunately, what we've talked about tonight, which I want to compliment the library trustees on what they're doing, because all their recommendations, so I support 100% every one of them, resonate with me, because we had control over the trusts that are depleted now, as I understand it, and maybe some have a little bit of money, but it was depleted without the trustees having, and trustee means you trust and you have some authority. So just that said, I think this is pointing out a very serious, probably in other areas of the charter, it's pointing out some serious unintended consequences, if I could use that word, or shortcomings, if I could use another set of words. But essentially, I have done tons of notes and I may ask for a little bit more. I think the term ministerial needs to find its way into the charter. The admin code has ministerial, regulatory, and advisory. And I think the term ministerial needs to find its way into, because that needs, they're ministers. They need to be handling money. There are other committees in town that we requested to become ministerial because we handle money. So that's really the correct way to go. And I would encourage this committee, and thank you for keeping it going, accepting and finding ways to incorporate all of those issues that were raised in resolutions that were raised by the trustees. It's really critically important to keeping the library going. It's critical to keeping the public involved. You know, if you don't have trustees that are actually conducting trustee work, why even have a board? And that's a shortcoming of the town right now, is that we're not using committees properly. Thank you.
No problem. Appreciate it. Fred, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment very briefly. Part of the discussion earlier that the committee took on was with respect to Article 3 and the question of town employees and their eligibility for appointed or elective positions in the town. And I gather just from the comments of the committee that there appears to be a willingness to strike that restriction from the current town charter. And in that regard, I would just express caution to the committee going forward as you further consider that potential change. The rationale for the existence of that restriction is really valid. It hinges partly on, you know, the potential for a employee of the town to coerce their subordinates in whatever department or agency they're employed in, you know, to assist their efforts in an election or to help them secure an appointment. It really is a valid and kind of long-standing type of restriction that many municipalities and other entities continue to observe. Beyond that, there's a rather strong temptation, shall I say, for certain employees to utilize, in this case, town resources toward their endeavor, whether it's seeking a elected or appointed position. It could be just a matter of their own time on the job, you know, devoting time at work to their political campaign, let's say. And really, moreover, the ultimate, I think, importance of the restriction is that with respect to ethical considerations, it helps to remove the appearance of conflict of interest. And earlier, Scott had made some good points tonight in speaking about conflict of interest, but I would just like to remind the committee that the state conflict of interest law is really far more than the actual black letter that it sets forth as to, you know, what does or what does not constitute a conflict of interest. And in fact, it, you know, considerations of whether someone has engaged in a conflict of interest really hinges upon a very factual intensive review. It's not very clear. It's very muddy, as a matter of fact. And
Fred, can I ask you to wrap up, please? Thank you.
Sure. And I just wanted you to consider that, I think, very carefully as you further undertake discussion on that measure. My own opinion is that the restriction should remain in the charter.
Okay, thank you very much. Good input. Christina, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I'm Christina Jemian from 221 Aldrich Road here in Bridgewater. And I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the resolutions made by the trustees of the library. I started out my association with the library as a volunteer for the Friends of the Library, where we raised money for those passes that Connie was talking about and other things. And then I became president of the Friends of the Library and spent many happy years as an employee, 7 years as a part-time employee of the library. So I have a long and close association, and the library is very dear to me. What Carlton referred to, what happened with the budget and where the library is almost closed, was heartbreaking and absolutely a blow to the morale of the employees of the library, to the morale, I think, of the citizens of the town who cared about the library. And at the same time, shortly after that, the charter changed and the power of the trustees was taken away to support the staff and do things on behalf of the library. And the power went from them to the director and to the town manager. And there's a danger there. I think it's very clear what Matt and Connie were talking about, that if you don't have guardrails, you have the potential for somebody to do away with whole sections without the trustees being able to say peep and without having any power. The library grew under the very strong board of trustees that I remember, grew to put on a big addition, which doubled the size of the library. They managed the gift by the Little, Mr. and Mrs. Little, which built the library to begin with. And I'm sorry to hear that those funds are depleted, but nothing lasts forever, especially if they're not invested properly. And we doubled the size of the library. We raised funds for that. We made a big campaign to raise money. It wasn't a town-driven thing. It was a community library-driven thing under the strong board of trustees that was in power at the time. And we also grew the library to become the regional library for interlibrary loan. So the library had a reputation among other libraries in the state and among other communities as being a strong, powerful position, a real asset to the town. I don't know that we can say that anymore. I think because the library is wounded and it's trying to recover, it's trying to get back to what it was. And if we can give the trustees some power, some authority, they can have commitment, they can ask for commitment from the town and from the community to build it up again. Otherwise, it's just another department among many under the governance of a director and a town manager that has many, many other responsibilities. And the board of trustees of the library is just by the wayside. So I hope that this committee will consider strongly those recommendations and restore power to the board of trustees. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Mark.
Thank you. Christina said it very eloquently, so I won't repeat it. I was a library trustee in another community for 25 years, and it's incredibly important for the library trustees to have not control over the day-to-day operation per se, that's what the director's for, but to have a say in who the director is. I went through 3 hiring processes, wouldn't see it any other way. There are resources out there like the Mass State Board of Library Commissioners to give some more advice on this. So I'm glad Cleone suggested that you wait and find out more information. I also agree wholeheartedly with Fred Chase on the other rule with town employees being to elected bodies. I have dealt with a lot of conflict of interest issues. I did extensive training on it, and it's absolutely critical to not blur the lines. And you could end up with a person who is a town employee, and then he or she becomes a town councilor and has say over the town manager. So I'm glad you're going to hold off on that one too, and then I'm looking forward to hearing the discussion on the town clerk. Thank you.
Mark.
I meant to say Mark Lindy, 56 Michael Road. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks. Bill, you had your hand up?
Yep, thank you. Bill Wood, 388 Hayward Street. I want to return back to the comments about the time of the election. I think the discussion was, couldn't we hold the election in November? The challenge there, because we walked through the same problem discussion at the Rules and Procedures the first time. The problem there is that Rainham would need to change their school committee election to November also.
Ooh,
You
hi
know,
there.
you could have all other positions, but you have to have the school committee elections at the same time. So good luck. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been
If you,
heartbreaking watching
folks,
us
if you're
walk
not
into the library.
speaking, please mute your
Oh,
phone.
no, it isn't. Is it really? Oh, sorry.
Josh, can you mute Christina? Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Adeline?
Yes, I had to briefly leave to attend another Zoom meeting, so I apologize if I speaking out of turn in terms of what was covered. Did we cover the town clerk issue?
No, we did not.
Okay. I just want to say briefly, I support library trustees and town clerk both being elected positions. When will the town clerk issue be addressed?
We're hoping we'll have time now, next week's meeting, a week from tonight.
Okay. Library trustees, again, need to be elected. And on returning to the issue of not having town employees also be counselors, that should not occur, again, because of the conflict of interest issue. I totally agree with the positions that Mr. Chase took earlier. I totally concur on that. So I agree with the previous comments, and I will stop now because I'll address issues about the clerk at next week's meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else like to chime in? Matt?
Yeah, sorry, I hate dragging out, but just because I threw it in the chat earlier, I'd like the committee to consider whether the reasons for having.
You froze.
But also for the trustees.
Matt, you broke up. I didn't hear the whole thing. You froze.
Just the ban on elected officials serving on committees. I'd like you guys to consider whether the reasons why you would not want the selectman or the clerk serving on a committee are the same reasons would apply to the board of trustees for the library not serving on any other committees.
Okay.
That's it for the elected officials. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. We'll close citizens' comment. Lively discussion tonight. We thank you all for your time. Any action items for our next meeting that we haven't already discussed? Anything new that we want to bring up here as a committee? No? Okay, great. All right, as mentioned, our next meeting is a week from tonight, January 6th at 6 p.m. So
Can you
unless,
go over those action items, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you go over the action items that you captured?
So the action items are really based around the follow-ups that Scott was going to do on the Article 3 changes. Other than that, I don't have anything specific outside of that, Leonie. I'm going to invite Marilee to come to fill us in on the election. I mean, Bill mentioned a valid point, but I want to hear from Marilee. And that's all I have, unless I missed something.
We were going to review the resolutions that the trustees committee would.
Sure, everyone's gonna, yeah, we're gonna review those individually and be prepared to vote next week on what we're gonna do with those. Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I, Thomas Golden, motion to adjourn the meeting.
For a second?
Darren Boston, second the motion.
All right. I assume there's no discussion, so we'll adjourn the meeting, and everybody, Happy New Year.
You
And
too.
enjoy your weekends, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Need a roll call vote, Ed.
Oh.
It's not a unanimous
Knew I
consent. vote.
forgot something. All right, go ahead, Josh, roll call.
Ed,
Yes.
Leonie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
I'm so glad we have an attorney now on our committee to keep us in line.